Hello, everybody. I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes, and welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. Today, we're going to be talking about Beauty and the Beast. Now, that is, we're not going to be talking about a book based on the movie. The book that I am going to be talking about is a modern version of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. A young woman who winds up isolated and alone with some beast or other, and that her love will transform him from being a beast into a decent human being, roughly put. Now, Beauty and the Beast is, like many fairy tales, like many Disney fairy tales, a story that has its detractors. In the case of Beauty and the Beast, the particular detraction specific to this story is that he, in effect, kidnaps her and keeps her captive and locked up against her will, and somehow, despite this, she falls in love with him and, through some alchemy, transforms him from a metaphorical monster, from a terrible person who would kidnap and lock up a young girl, into a decent human being. And this is problematic in terms of it encouraging young girls to think that if they just stick with their abusive boyfriend, eventually he'll turn out nice. He started out so nice after all. And it's problematic in terms of encouraging people to think that kidnapping is an okay way to get a girlfriend, and all of those things. Those are problems. I will not dispute it. But there are two things here. First of all, as a fairy tale, it is an exaggeration for the purpose of the lesson it intends to impart. That is, the lesson it intends to impart is that love is something transformative, that it is something that changes people, that it is a thing that can bring out the best in people. This is exemplified by the notion of a person who decides that they will um, start donating to charity because they love somebody so much that they want to donate large amounts of money to charity to support the uh, cause of breast cancer because their wife uh, developed breast cancer. It is about somebody who begins to uh, tries to make themselves into a better person because they want to get the attention of a person that they're in love with, and in the process of doing that, gets that person's attention. It's about somebody who, being in a relationship, learns to be more caring of others, learns to be more generous because when you're in a relationship, it's all about compromise between two people because two people do not agree about everything at all times, and compromise is necessary for a working relationship. These are all things that love can cause a person to be transformed with or by. Um, and they are the thing is that Beauty and the Beast is about, as a fairy tale, is a story that you are exaggerating these possibilities for dramatic effect, for the effect of wonder, because it is a story about good and evil and archetypes, the transformation of a person from mediocre and or bad into somebody genuinely good is equally as exaggerated for the effects of both wonderment and drama. Uh, Belle in the movie also undergoes a transformation, and the reason I'm sticking with Disney's Beauty and the Beast is because, if I'm not mistaken, this is the most well-known version of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale, and so I'm sticking with it because this is the go-to story for most of us. And in this story, Belle also undergoes a transformation, and that transformation was caused by the beast, and it is also perhaps a subtler transformation, but nonetheless equally important, and that is the transformation of somebody who is a dreamer into a person who does things. At the start of the movie, Belle talks about how she wants to be somewhere other than this little village, but you don't see her looking for a way out. She talks about how she doesn't want to, you know, be friends or in love with or marry Gaston, but you don't see her looking for someone else to be friends with. She just dismisses the whole village. And we know that there's at least one other person in the village who likes her and appreciates her because the man who runs the bookstore is clearly friends with her. And that suggests she's not putting in the effort. And it isn't until her father is kidnapped and the horse Philippe comes back and she goes looking for her father, it isn't until she trades her freedom for her father's and stays with the beast. It isn't until then that she is doing something about her desire for something more than living with her father and hearing villagers whisper behind her back. And that is an important transformation. You can say she never goes off to have adventures, but the point is that without the beast, she never would have left home to try anything anyways. And this book, Mercedes Lackey's The Fire Rose, is a version of that story. This is about a sorcerer, a elemental master, who decided he was going to try out a particular piece of transformative magic. It backfired on him, and he's changed into a sort of a half-man, half-wolf creature. I find that this book is a precursor to Mercedes Lackey's Elemental Masters series, which, for the record, is a collection of variations on the various fairy tales, from Sleeping Beauty to Rapunzel, Little Red Riding Hood. These show up in her Elemental Masters series, and this story, although it is not officially part of the series, very clearly follows in its stamp because it tells the fairy tale of Beauty and the Beast and involves Elemental Masters. That is a magical system where people who are born with the metaphysical imbalance of more of one of the four elements, earth, air, fire, or water, have the ability to commune with elemental creatures of that element and to draw from that element for magical power, and therefore have the ability to do certain magical things, the limits of which are not strictly explored in this. But the idea is basically that he can do things like set things on fire with a thought and use fire to create magic shields and wards that will protect his home and the homes of others, and so on and so forth. And Rose, Rosalind Hawkins, is our lead female character, the Belle character. Jason Cameron is the Beast character. And at the start of this, her father has died, she is destitute, and he has been looking for somebody with the knowledge to do the necessary research and translations with him to turn him back into a regular human. And he writes this letter upon finding out about her because she is exactly the sort of unattached, highly intelligent, limited in prospects individual that he needs to do this research. Because his previous master, that is, the person who trained him to be a fire master, had also trained him to see people, not as equals, not as individuals deserving of kindness and compassion, but to see people as resources. Now, they were to be seen as resources to be preserved, to be handled carefully, to be looked after, in much the same way, to use the metaphor given in the book, the same way that if you have a flock of sheep, you look after them, you protect them from wolves, and that way you can use them for their fleece or butcher them for their meat, and so on and so forth. And Rosalind Rose comes there. She finds out eventually that he has not. She gets there and discovers, first of all, that he's brought her under false pretenses, because the letter he sent was, "I'm looking for a governess to teach my 2 children." And then when she gets there, he says, "I was looking for somebody to help with my research, but you wouldn't have come if I'd said it." And she agrees to stay with him anyways, and they form a working relationship. She eventually finds out that he is a magician transformed. And the thing is that they undergo similar transformations to in the movie. He undergoes the discovery, the transformation, that he can learn to trust other people, that he learns how to be more humble, he learns how to be more humane and to care more about other people than himself. Well, she learns how to do things, how to act. Up until that point, she had been living with her father, but she hadn't done many things. She had managed to get into a university, but it was a university that did already take women, and indeed, when she lost her her father died, and she no longer had access to his income, and the creditors descended, and people were taking all of her and her father's property. At that point, she started thinking about suicide, not finding a job, not seeing how she could manage to finish her doctorate degree. All she thought of, the only thing that came to her, was committing suicide. And her experiences with Jason Cameron get her to the point where she realizes that this is not the option. It's not the option when you're educated, when you can find other things, when you are well. I don't want to get into a debate about doctor-assisted suicide, but there are points when suicide may be a rational choice, but when you are just suffering from some poverty but could still find yourself a job as a teacher or a governess or something, as she was limited by, because this is a story set in the 1800s in the United States. So as a woman, she was severely limited. But nonetheless, there was no genuine reason for her to commit suicide. And this story basically, it has her learn that there are options, there are things she can do, and it has her choose to do things. And that is the transformation, or at least the modern transformation, that is applied to the young woman of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale, is the idea that it gives her her own transformation of making choices, of choosing to do things, of choosing to stay with the Beast, of choosing to help the Beast, of choosing to do something. And so this story, I wouldn't call this story heavy reading. It's fun and it's light, and part of the reason I'm doing light stuff is because I am sort of in a time crunch of late with rereading books for this series of YouTube videos, so I picked a book that would be easy to reread in a couple of days. But I think it's always important to remember that about any fairy tale. And as I come up on the end of my time, I will stop having my disquisition about Beauty and the Beast and fairy tales and how people need to stop treating them badly. And thank everybody for listening, and I hope to see you next week, possibly even comments. Uh,